The starship Horizon's Edge moved silently through the darkness of space. It was a massive vessel, home to over 3,000 crew members from 12 different species. Humans, Kalorians, Thexans, and many others lived and worked together aboard this flying city. They had one mission: to explore the unknown regions of the galaxy and build bridges between their worlds. Kang Tae-woo sat alone in the engineering bay, his fingers moving across a holographic display. He was 28 years old, with messy black hair and tired eyes that still held a gentle warmth. He had been stationed on this ship for 2 years now, and he had grown used to its hum and rhythm. The engines were like a heartbeat to him. He understood them better than he understood most people. "You are still here." Tae-woo turned to see Park Ji-na walking toward him with 2 cups of coffee. She was his best friend, the only other human in the engineering department. Her short hair was tied back, and she wore the same gray uniform as him, but somehow she always made it look more stylish. "Someone has to watch the power grid," Tae-woo said, accepting the coffee with a small smile. "The power grid is fine. You just hate the social hour." Ji-na sat down next to him and took a long sip from her cup. "The Thexan ambassador is telling stories about his home world. It is actually interesting." "I will pass." Ji-na shook her head. "You know, for someone who chose to live on a ship full of aliens, you really do not like talking to them." Tae-woo did not argue. She was right. He was not shy exactly, but he found it hard to connect with others. Words never came easily to him in conversation. They got stuck somewhere between his heart and his mouth. But when he was alone, when he had a pen in his hand and paper in front of him, the words flowed like water. That was his secret. In a galaxy where everything was digital, where thoughts were recorded in data and sent across light years in seconds, Kang Tae-woo still wrote by hand. He had a notebook, real paper bound in leather, that he had brought from Earth, and in that notebook he wrote letters he never sent. Most of them were addressed to one person. Her name was Valera. She was a Kalorian, a species known for their tall and slender bodies, their silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in dim light, and their brilliant minds. Kalorians were logical, disciplined, and efficient. They did not waste time on things they considered unnecessary. Emotions, to them, were just chemical reactions to be managed, not celebrated. Valera was the ship's strategic liaison, which meant she handled communications between species and solved conflicts before they became problems. She was respected by everyone and feared by some. Her voice was calm and cold, her violet eyes sharp and unreadable. She moved through the ship like a queen, and everyone stepped aside when she passed. Tae-woo had fallen for her the first day he saw her. It happened in the mess hall. He had been eating alone, as usual, when she walked in. The lights caught her silver skin, and for a moment, she looked like something from an old earth painting. Something beautiful and untouchable. She did not notice him. Why would she? He was just another human, another face in the crowd. But he noticed her. And he could not stop noticing her after that. He watched her from a distance, learning her habits. She always took her meals at the same time. She preferred the observation deck when she needed to think. She had a habit of tilting her head slightly when she was curious about something. And sometimes, very rarely, she smiled. Not a big smile, just a small curve of her lips. But when she did, Tae-woo felt like the stars themselves had dimmed in comparison. He never spoke to her. What would he say? He was an engineer who talked to machines. She was an officer who shaped the future of interspecies relations. They existed in different worlds, even on the same ship, so he wrote to her instead. In his letters, he told her everything he could not say out loud. He wrote about the way her presence made his heart beat faster. He wrote about her grace, her intelligence, her quiet strength. He described her figure in ways that made him blush as he wrote, the elegant curve of her neck, the way her uniform fit her tall frame. the glow of her skin under the ship's lights. He wrote about how he wished he could make her laugh, how he dreamed of hearing her say his name. These letters were his private treasure, his escape. He knew they were foolish. He knew that if anyone found them, he would die of embarrassment. But writing them made him feel closer to her, even if she would never know he existed. One evening, Valera herself came to the engineering bay. Tae-woo nearly dropped his tools when he saw her walk through the door. His heart jumped into his throat. "Engineer Kang," she said, her voice smooth and cool. "I require a report on the secondary power systems. The captain wishes to review efficiency ratings." "Yes, of course." Tae-woo hated the way his voice shook. He pulled up the data on his display, trying to keep his hands steady. "The systems are operating at 94% efficiency. I can send you the full report within the hour." Valera studied him for a moment. Her violet eyes moved over his face, and he felt like she was reading his soul. Then, she nodded once. "Acceptable. I will expect it." She turned to leave, then paused. "You are the human who writes in a physical book, correct?" Tae-woo froze. "How did you know that?" I observe," she said simply. "It is an unusual practice. Most species abandoned physical writing long ago. Why do you continue it?" He swallowed hard. "It helps me think. Some things are easier to write than to say." She tilted her head in that curious way of hers. "Interesting. Humans are strange creatures." She did not say it as an insult. It sounded almost like a compliment. "Good evening, Engineer Kang." And then she was gone. Tae-woo stood there for a long time, his heart pounding. She had noticed him. She knew about his notebook. The thought terrified him and thrilled him at the same time. That night, he wrote another letter. This one was longer than the others, filled with new hope and new fear. He described the way she had looked at him, the way her voice had softened just slightly when she called humans strange. He wrote about how much he wished he had the courage to tell her the truth. But courage was something Kang Tae-woo did not have. Not yet. So he hid the letter with the others and went to sleep, dreaming of violet eyes and silver skin. 2 weeks passed after Valera's visit to the engineering bay. Tae-woo tried to return to his normal routine, but something had changed. He found himself looking for her everywhere he went. Sometimes he caught a glimpse of her silver form in the distance, and his heart would skip like a stone on water. He wrote more letters. The notebook was getting full now, page after page of his hidden feelings. He knew he should stop. He knew it was foolish to pour his heart onto paper for someone who would never read it. But he could not help himself. Writing to Valera was the only way he could be honest. The only place where he did not have to hide. Gina noticed the change in him. "You are distracted lately," she said one morning as they worked on a faulty power conduit. "More than usual, I mean. What is going on in that head of yours?" "Nothing," Tae-woo lied. "Liar." Gina grinned at him. "Is it a girl? Please tell me it is a girl. You need something in your life besides engines and that old notebook." Tae-woo felt his face grow warm. "It is nothing. Focus on the conduit." Gina laughed but let it go. She was a good friend that way. She teased him, but she never pushed too hard. That afternoon, the ship's alarm system activated. A loud warning echoed through every corridor, and red lights flashed along the walls. Tae-woo's stomach dropped as he heard the announcement. "Attention all crew. Hull breach detected in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency teams report to stations." Sector 7 was near the crew quarters. Tae-woo ran with everyone else, his mind racing. A hull breach could mean anything from a small crack to a deadly explosion. In space, there was no room for mistakes. The emergency lasted 3 hours. Teams sealed the breach while others checked every system for damage. In the end, it turned out to be a false alarm. A sensor malfunction had triggered the warning. There was no actual breach, but the protocol had been followed. Every room in Sector 7 had been inspected by security teams to ensure no one was trapped or injured, including Tae-woo's quarters. He did not think about it at first. He was too busy helping the engineering team run diagnostics on the sensor array. By the time he returned to his room, it was late in the evening. He was tired and wanted only to sleep. But when he stepped inside, something felt wrong. His room looked the same as always. Small, neat, with a single window, showing the stars outside. His desk was against the wall, his bed in the corner, his few personal items arranged just as he had left them, except for the notebook. It was closed now, sitting in the center of his desk. But Tae-woo always left it open, always on the last page he had written. Someone had touched his notebook. Someone had moved it. His blood turned cold. During the emergency inspection, someone had been in his room. Someone had seen the notebook lying open, and someone had read it. Tae-woo grabbed the notebook and flipped through the pages with shaking hands. Everything was still there. Nothing was torn or missing. But that did not make him feel better. The words he had written were burned into his memory. The descriptions of Valera, the confessions of his feelings, the embarrassing details about her figure that he had never meant for anyone to see. Who had read it? A security officer? A fellow crew member? The thought made him sick. He spent the night unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling and imagining the worst. What if they reported him? What if Valera found out? What if he became the joke of the entire ship? The next morning, he forced himself to go to work. He kept his head down and avoided eye contact with everyone. Gina asked if he was feeling sick, and he said yes, hoping she would leave him alone. He made it through half the day before he saw her. Valera was standing at the entrance to the engineering bay, talking with the chief engineer. She looked the same as always, tall and elegant, her silver skin catching the light. But when her violet eyes found Tae-woo across the room, something in her expression changed. She smiled, not her usual small, polite smile. This was different. There was a knowing quality to it, a secret hidden in the curve of her lips. Her eyes held his for a long moment, and Tae-woo felt like he could not breathe. She knew. The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. Valera had been part of the inspection team. She was a senior officer. Of course she would have been involved. And she had been curious about his notebook. She had admitted it herself. She had read his letters. All of them. Tae-woo wanted to run. He wanted to hide in the deepest part of the ship and never come out. But his legs would not move. He stood frozen as Valera finished her conversation and walked toward him. "Engineer Kang," she said, her voice calm and professional. "I trust you are well? After yesterday's emergency?" Yes, I am fine." His voice came out as a whisper. "Good." She paused, and that smile returned. "I found your quarters very interesting during the inspection. You have an impressive collection of thoughts in that notebook of yours." Tae-woo's face burned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Valera leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Your observations about Kalorian anatomy are quite detailed. I did not know humans paid such close attention to such things." He thought he might die right there on the spot. "I have questions," she continued, her eyes never leaving his. "About human customs. About why you write such things, but never speak them. I expect you to answer them." She straightened and spoke at normal volume again. "I will find you later, Engineer Kang. Do not attempt to hide." And with that, she walked away, leaving Tae-woo standing in the middle of the engineering bay, his heart racing and his mind spinning. Gina appeared at his side a moment later. "What was that about? Why do you look like you just saw a ghost?" Tae-woo could not answer. He could only watch Valera's silver form disappear through the door, her final words echoing in his head. Do not attempt to hide. He was doomed. Completely and utterly doomed. The most beautiful woman on the ship had read every secret thought he had ever written about her. She knew about his feelings, his dreams, his embarrassing descriptions of her body, and she wanted to talk about it. Tae-woo did not know if this was the worst day of his life or the most terrifying. Maybe both. All he knew was that his quiet, hidden world had just been torn wide open, and there was nowhere left to run. That evening, he sat in his quarters and stared at the notebook in his hands. Part of him wanted to burn it. Part of him wanted to throw it out the airlock. But a small, stubborn part of him felt something else entirely. She had read his words. She knew his heart. And instead of reporting him, or mocking him, she had smiled. What did that mean? He did not know. But he was about to find out. 3 days passed, and Valera did not come. Tae-woo spent every moment waiting for her. He jumped at every sound, turned at every movement, and held his breath whenever someone entered a room. But the tall, silver figure never appeared. It was like she had forgotten about him entirely. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she had decided his letters were not worth discussing. Maybe she was disgusted and simply did not want to waste her time on a foolish human and his embarrassing words. The uncertainty was killing him. "You look terrible," Gina said on the third morning. They were eating breakfast in the mess hall, and Tae-woo had barely touched his food. "Seriously, Tae-woo, what is wrong with you? You have been acting strange all week. I told you. I am not feeling well, and I told you that is a lie." Gina leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Talk to me. We have been friends for 5 years. I know when something is eating you alive." Tae-woo stared at his plate. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to share the weight that was crushing his chest. But how could he explain? How could he say that he had been writing love letters to a Kalorian officer and that she had found them and read every single word? "I made a mistake," he finally said. "A big one, and I do not know how to fix it." Gina's expression softened. "Is it about a girl?" He nodded slowly. "The Kalorian? The tall one with the silver skin?" Tae-woo's head snapped up. "How did you know?" Gina laughed quietly. "Tae-woo, you are not as subtle as you think. I have seen the way you look at her. Like she is made of starlight." She reached across the table and patted his hand. "Whatever happened, it cannot be that bad. Just talk to her. Be honest." "I cannot." "Why not?" "Because she already knows everything," he thought. "Because I wrote things about her that I should never have written. Because I am a coward who hides behind paper instead of speaking the truth." Before he could answer, a shadow fell over their table. Engineer Kang. The voice was smooth and cold, and it sent a shiver down Tae-woo's spine. He looked up to see Valera standing beside them, her violet eyes fixed on him. She was wearing her formal uniform today, the dark fabric making her silver skin shine even brighter. "Officer Valera," Gina said, surprised. "Can we help you? I require Engineer Kang's assistance with a technical matter." Valera did not look at Gina. Her gaze never left Tae-woo's face. "It is urgent." Gina glanced between them, clearly sensing something she did not understand. But she was smart enough not to ask questions. "Of course. I will see you later, Tae-woo." Gina. "Clear, Woo." She stood and walked away, leaving Tae-woo alone with Valera. "Come with me," Valera said. It was not a request. Tae-woo followed her through the ship's corridors. She walked fast, her long legs covering distance quickly, and he had to hurry to keep up. She did not speak, and he did not dare to break the silence. His heart was pounding so hard, he thought she must be able to hear it. She led him to a small room near the observation deck. It was a private meeting space, the kind officers used for confidential conversations. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss, and suddenly they were alone. Valera turned to face him. For a long moment, she simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data pad. She pressed a button, and an image appeared on the screen. It was a photograph of a page from his notebook. His handwriting, his words. "I took this during the inspection," she said calmly. "I hope you do not mind." Tae-woo's face burned. The page she had chosen was one of the worst ones, filled with descriptions of her beauty and her figure. Reading it again now, in front of her, made him want to sink through the floor. "Officer Valera, I can explain. You find me attractive." She said it like a simple fact, like she was reading a report. "You admire my appearance, my movements, she glanced at the datapad, graceful form that makes your heart ache with longing. Please stop. Why?" She tilted her head, that familiar, curious gesture. "These are your words. Do you not stand by them?" Taewoo forced himself to meet her eyes. "I do. Every word is true. I never meant for you to see them. I never meant for anyone to see them. Then why write them at all?" It was a simple question, but it cut deep. Why did he write? Why did he pour his heart onto paper instead of speaking it aloud? "Because I am afraid," he admitted. "Because words are hard for me. When I talk, everything comes out wrong. But when I write, I can say what I really mean. I can be honest without worrying about how it sounds." Valera studied him for a long moment. Her violet eyes seemed to see right through him, past his fear and his shame, down to something deeper. "Among Kalorians," she said slowly, "attraction is not hidden. If someone finds another appealing, they say so directly. There is no need for secrecy or letters or poetry. It is simply stated as fact." "That sounds efficient." "It is." She paused. "But it is also cold. There is no anticipation, no mystery. No." She searched for the word. "Yearning." Taewoo blinked. "You know that word?" "I have been researching human romantic customs since I read your letters." A faint color appeared on her silver cheeks, a pale blue that Taewoo had never seen before. "Your species is very strange. You hide your feelings, you suffer in silence, you write secret letters that you never send." "I know, and yet..." She took a step closer to him. "I find myself thinking about it constantly. About you. About your words. About why a human would spend so much time writing about someone he believes will never know." Taewoo's breath caught in his throat. She was close now. Close enough that he could see the faint glow of her skin, the tiny flecks of silver in her violet eyes. "You describe me as beautiful," she said softly. "As graceful and captivating. You write about my figure in ways that should make me angry, but instead..." She shook her head slightly, as if confused by her own reaction. Instead, she shook her head. She shook her head. She shook her head. "I find it flattering. Exciting, even. No one has ever looked at me the way your letters describe. No one has ever wanted me the way you seem to want me. Valera. I do not understand these feelings," she continued. "They are inefficient, distracting. They serve no logical purpose, but I cannot make them stop, and I am not certain I want to." She reached out and placed her hand on his chest, right over his racing heart. Her touch was warm despite her silver skin, and Taewoo felt like electricity was flowing through him. "Your heart is beating very fast," she observed. "Yes." "Because of me?" "Yes." She smiled then, that rare and precious expression that made his soul light up. "Good. I would be disappointed if I was the only one feeling this way." Taewoo did not know what to say. He did not know what to do. His secret was out, his shame exposed. And yet somehow, the woman of his dreams was standing in front of him, telling him that she felt something too. "I have a request," Valera said, withdrawing her hand. "Write me another letter. But this time, write it knowing that I will read it. Show me what human romance truly looks like when it is not hidden in the shadows." "And then what?" Her violet eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. "And then we will see where this inefficient emotion takes us. I find myself curious to experience it fully." 1. She turned and walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the panel. "Do not make me wait too long, Engineer Kang. Patience is not a Kalorian strength. And then she was gone, leaving Tae-woo alone with his pounding heart and a new kind of hope blooming in his chest. Tae-woo spent the entire night writing. He sat at his small desk, the notebook open before him, and he poured everything onto the page. This letter was different from the others. Those had been written in secret, hidden confessions meant only for himself. But this one was meant to be read. This one was meant for her. He wrote about his fear. He wrote about how terrified he had been when he realized she had found his letters. He wrote about the shame that had burned through him, the certainty that she would hate him or mock him or report him to the captain. And then he wrote about hope. He wrote about the moment in the meeting room when she had touched his chest and felt his racing heart. He wrote about her smile, that rare and beautiful thing that made the entire universe fade away. He wrote about how her words had changed everything, how knowing that she felt something too had turned his fear into something else entirely. He described her again, but differently this time. Not just her appearance, but the things he had learned about her over the months of watching from afar. The way she listened carefully when others spoke. The way she defended her crew members when they were criticized unfairly. The small acts of kindness she performed when she thought no one was looking. The hidden warmth beneath her cold exterior. He told her that her figure was beautiful. Yes, but more than that, he told her that her soul was beautiful. That she was more than grace and silver skin. That she was strength and intelligence and quiet compassion, and that he admired all of it. When dawn came, the letter was finished. 12 pages of his heart, written in his careful hand. He found Valera on the observation deck that evening. She was standing alone by the great window, watching the stars drift past. The light from a distant nebula painted her silver skin in shades of purple and blue. Engineer Kang. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. You came. You told me not to make you wait. A small smile touched her lips. I did. Do you have something for me? He held out the folded pages. His hand was trembling slightly, but he forced himself to stand steady. She took the letter and held it gently, like it was something precious. May I read it now? If you want. She opened the pages and began to read. Tae-woo watched her face, looking for any sign of her reaction. Her expression remained calm at first, that familiar Kalorian control. But as she continued reading, something changed. Her violet eyes widened. Her silver cheeks flushed pale blue. Her breathing became slower, deeper. When she finished, she stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the pages in her hands. This is... She paused, searching for words. This is not what I expected. Is that bad? No. She looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Vulnerability. It is overwhelming. I did not know that words could make me feel this way. Like my chest is full of light. Like I am standing at the edge of something vast and beautiful and terrifying. Tae-woo took a step closer. That is what humans call being moved. It is what happens when something touches your heart. Kalorians do not speak of hearts. We speak of logic and efficiency and optimal outcomes. She folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest. But there is nothing logical about this. There is nothing efficient about the way I feel when I read your words. And I do not care. She turned to face the window, and Tae-woo stood beside her. The stars stretched endlessly before them. Cold and distant and eternal. Tell me about human courtship, she said quietly. Explain it to me. Why do your people make it so complicated? Tae-woo thought for a moment before answering. I think it is because love is precious to us. It is rare and fragile, and we do not want to waste it on someone who does not feel the same way. So we test the waters slowly. We drop hints and look for signs. We try to understand the other person's feelings before we risk our own. That sounds painful. It can be. But it can also be beautiful. The anticipation, the wondering, the hoping. When you finally find out that someone loves you back, it means more, because you waited for it, because you earned it. Valera considered this. Among my people, attraction is determined by genetic compatibility scans. If two Kalorians are a good match, they are informed, and they may choose to pursue a partnership. There is no mystery, no uncertainty. That sounds very practical. It is. And it works. Kalorian partnerships are stable and productive. She paused. But they are not passionate. There is no fire in them. No poetry. She turned to look at him, and her violet eyes were intense. When I read your letters, I felt something I have never felt before. A hunger. A need. Not just physical, but deeper than that. I wanted to know you. To understand you. To be close to you in ways that have nothing to do with genetic compatibility. That is what humans call desire, Taewoo said softly. It is wanting someone, not because it makes sense, but because your heart demands it. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. That is exactly what it is. Rain's arm. Online. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. After a while, Valera spoke again. I want to learn more. Teach me about human romance. Show me what it means to court someone properly. Taewoo felt his heart skip. You want me to court you? Is that not what you have been doing? With your letters and your longing looks and your secret admiration? She smiled slightly. You have already begun. I am simply asking you to continue. But, openly, this time. Without hiding. I do not know if I can do that. I am not good with words when I speak. I only know how to write them. Then write them. Write me a letter every day. Tell me things that you cannot say out loud, and I will try to understand this strange human practice. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and smooth against his skin. Perhaps I will even try to write something in return. Though I warn you, Kalorians are not known for our poetry. Taewoo laughed softly. I would read anything you wrote, even if it was just a list of numbers. Good. Because that is probably what my first attempt will look like. They both smiled then. And something shifted between them. The distance that had always separated them began to fade. They were no longer an officer and an engineer, an alien and a human. They were just two people, standing at the edge of something new and wonderful. I should go, Valera said eventually. I have duties to attend to, but I will find you tomorrow, and I expect another letter. Yes, ma'am. She raised an eyebrow at him. Ma'am? Sorry, old habit. I prefer Valera. When we are alone, at least. She squeezed his hand once, before releasing it. Good night. Taewoo. It was the first time she had used his first name. The sound of it on her lips made his chest ache with happiness. Good night, Valera. She walked away, her silver form glowing softly in the starlight. Taewoo watched her until she disappeared around the corner. Then, he turned back to the window and stared out at the universe. He had spent 2 years hiding his feelings, burying them in pages that no one would ever see. And now, somehow, impossibly, the woman he loved wanted him to keep writing. She wanted him to teach her about human romance. She wanted to learn what it meant to be courted. He smiled at his reflection in the window. Tomorrow, he would write her another letter. And the day after that, and every day after that, until she told him to stop. This was only the beginning. The days that followed were unlike anything Taewoo had ever experienced. True to his promise, he wrote Valera a letter every day. Sometimes they were long, filled with stories from his life on Earth and dreams for the future. Sometimes they were short, just a few lines about how thinking of her made the long shifts easier to bear. But every letter came from his heart, and every letter found its way into Valera's hands. She read them all. He knew this because she would reference them when they met. You wrote about rain today? She might say. About how you miss the sound of it against your window on Earth. I have never experienced rain. I would like to see it someday. Artifully, 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 and Tae-woo would smile and make a note to write about rain again, to describe it in more detail, to help her understand that simple human pleasure. They began meeting regularly on the observation deck. It became their place, that quiet corner of the ship where stars wheeled past, and the noise of daily life faded away. They would stand together by the window, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in a small town in Korea, about his grandmother, who taught him to write letters, about the first time he looked up at the night sky and dreamed of touching the stars. She told him about Kalor, a world of crystal cities and endless logic, where children were raised to serve the collective good, and emotions were considered a weakness to be overcome. I never questioned it, she admitted one evening. I was proud of my discipline. I thought that feeling nothing was strength. But now, she shook her head slowly, now I wonder what I have been missing all these years. It is not too late to learn, Tae-woo said gently. No, I suppose it is not. She looked at him, and her violet eyes held something warm and soft. You are a good teacher. The crew began to notice. It started with small things. Valera laughing at something Tae-woo said in the corridor. Valera visiting the engineering bay for reasons that had nothing to do with technical reports. Valera's schedule somehow always aligning with Tae-woo's mealtimes, so that they ended up eating together. A Kalorian officer spending time with a human engineer was unusual enough. But a Kalorian officer smiling and laughing? That was unheard of. Rumors spread quickly on a ship. Within a week, everyone seemed to know that something strange was happening between Officer Valera and Engineer Kang. Some thought it was amusing. Others thought it was inappropriate. A few thought it was beautiful. Ji-na was delighted. I knew it, she said triumphantly when Tae-woo finally told her the truth. They were sitting in her quarters, sharing a bottle of rice wine that she had somehow smuggled aboard. I knew there was something going on. The way you looked at her, the way she started looking at you. It was obvious to anyone paying attention. Is it really that obvious? Tae-woo, she follows you around like you are made of gold. The cold Kalorian queen turns into a blushing girl whenever you walk into a room. Yes, it is obvious. He groaned and buried his face in his hands. What do I do? What do you mean, what do you do? You keep doing what you are doing. Gina punched his shoulder lightly. You are winning her over, you idiot. With love letters. Do you know how romantic that is? Half the humans on this ship would kill to have your luck. It does not feel like luck. It feels terrifying. That is how you know it is real. Gina's voice softened. Look, I have known you for a long time. You have always been afraid of putting yourself out there. You hide behind your work and your machines and your notebook. But this is you being brave. This is you taking a chance. And it is working. Tae-woo looked at her. You really think so? I know so. Now stop worrying and go write her another letter. That night, Tae-woo wrote his most honest letter yet. He wrote about his fears, the deep ones that he had never shared with anyone. The fear that he was not interesting enough, not talented enough, not good enough. The fear that Valera would eventually realize he was just an ordinary human with nothing special to offer. The fear that this beautiful thing between them would fade and leave him emptier than before. But he also wrote about hope. He wrote about how meeting her had changed him, how her curiosity and her questions had forced him to examine himself in new ways. He wrote about how her smiles made him brave, how her interest made him feel worthy. And then he wrote about her, not just her beauty this time, though he mentioned that too. He wrote about her kindness, the way she had defended a nervous young officer during a tense meeting with the captain. He wrote about her curiosity, the endless questions she asked about human customs and feelings. He wrote about her courage, the way she had chosen to explore something new and frightening instead of retreating to the safety of Kalorian logic. He wrote that he was falling in love with her. Not just attracted, not just infatuated, but truly and deeply falling in love. When he gave her the letter the next day, his hands were shaking. Valera read it in front of him. He watched her face change as she moved through the pages, watched the blue flush creep up her silver cheeks, watched her eyes grow bright with something that looked like tears but could not be, because Kalorians did not cry. When she finished, she did not speak for a long time. She just stood there, holding the letter like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "No one has ever said these things to me," she finally whispered. "No one has ever seen me this way." Then they were not looking hard enough. She laughed, a strange and wonderful sound. "You, humans, and your words. You have this power that my people never developed. This ability to make someone feel like they matter, like they are special. You are special." She looked at him, and for once, her violet eyes held no coldness, no distance. They were open and vulnerable, and full of something he had hoped to see, but never dared to expect. "I think I am falling in love with you too," she said. "I do not fully understand what that means yet. But I know that when I am not with you, I wish I was. I know that your letters have become the most important part of my day. I know that the thought of returning to a life without you in it makes me feel empty in a way that logic cannot explain." Tae-woo felt his heart swell until he thought it might burst. "Then do not go back," he said. "Stay here. Stay with me. Let us figure this out together." Valera smiled her rare smile, and this time it reached her eyes. "I think I would like that," she said. She reached out and took his hand, and they stood together in the starlight, two people from different worlds choosing to build something new. Behind them, through the window, the universe stretched on forever, full of danger and mystery and wonder. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the warmth of her hand in his and the promise of what was to come. The shift had happened. They were no longer two separate people circling each other from a distance. They were something more now. Something beautiful and terrifying and absolutely worth the risk. The attack came without warning. Tae-woo was in the engineering bay when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed along every wall, and the ship shuddered as if struck by a giant fist. He grabbed a console to steady himself as the floor tilted beneath his feet. "All hands to battle stations." The captain's voice boomed over the speakers. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Vraxan warship detected. All crew prepare for combat." Vraxans. Tae-woo's blood went cold. The Vraxans were a warrior species from the outer regions of the galaxy. They were tall and scaled, with 4 arms and eyes that burned like hot coals. They despised most other species, but they hated humans most of all. To the Vraxans, human emotions were a disease, a corruption that spread weakness wherever it touched. They believed the galaxy would be better off without humanity entirely. "Tae-woo!" Gina's voice cut through the chaos. She was running toward him, her face pale with fear. "We need to get the shields back to full power. The first hit damaged the primary capacitors." "I know. Help me with the bypass." They worked frantically, their fingers flying over controls and circuits. Around them, the ship groaned and shook as more impacts struck the hull. Through the viewport, Tae-woo could see the Vraxan warship, a massive black vessel covered in weapons and armor. It was 3 times the size of the Horizon's Edge. They were outmatched. Everyone knew it. The battle lasted 2 hours. The Horizon's Edge fought bravely, but the Vraxan ship was too powerful. By the time the firing stopped, half the Horizon's systems were damaged. A third of the crew was injured, and everyone knew they could not survive another assault. Then the transmission came. The Vraxan commander appeared on every screen throughout the ship. His face was lizard-like, covered in dark green scales, and his 4 eyes burned with contempt. "Crew of the Horizon's Edge," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "You have fought well. But you cannot win. I offer you a choice. Taewoo watched the screen with dread building in his stomach. Surrender your human crew members to us, the commander continued. All 43 of them. They will be taken to Vraxan space for processing. In exchange, the rest of your crew will be allowed to leave unharmed. Processing. Everyone knew what that meant. Execution. After who knew what kind of torture. You have 1 hour to decide. If you refuse, we will destroy your ship and everyone aboard. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Silence fell over the ship. Taewoo looked at Jina, saw the fear in her eyes, and knew it was reflected in his own. 43 humans. That was everyone. His entire species on this ship, offered up like sacrifices to save the rest. The captain called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. Taewoo was not invited, but he knew Valera would be there. He waited outside the conference room, his heart pounding, praying for a miracle. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. When the door finally opened, Valera was the first one out. Her face was hard, her violet eyes blazing with an emotion Taewoo had never seen before. She walked past him without a word, her stride fast and purposeful. Valera, wait. She stopped but did not turn around. Not now. Taewoo, what happened in there? What did they decide? She was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to face him, and he saw something in her expression that made his breath catch. They are considering it, she said quietly. The surrender. Some of the officers believe it is the logical choice. Sacrifice 43 to save 3,000. Taewoo felt like he had been punched in the stomach. And you? What do you believe? Valera stepped closer to him. Her hand came up to touch his face, gentle and warm against his skin. I believe that I finally understand what you have been teaching me about human hearts, she said. I believe that some things are worth fighting for, even when logic says to surrender. I believe that love is not a weakness, but a strength that my people have forgotten. She pulled him close and pressed her lips to his forehead, a gesture so tender and human that it made his eyes burn with tears. Wait here, she whispered. I have something to say to that Vraxan commander. She left him standing there and marched toward the bridge. Taewoo followed at a distance, unable to stay behind, needing to see what she would do. The bridge was crowded with officers and crew. The captain stood at the center, his face gray with the weight of impossible choices. On the main screen, the Vraxan commander waited with cruel patience. Valera walked straight to the communications console and opened a channel before anyone could stop her. This is Officer Valera of the Kalorian Diplomatic Corps, she announced, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. I am addressing the Vraxan commander directly. The commander's eyes narrowed. Speak, Kalorian. I want to reject your offer. On behalf of the entire crew of the Horizon's Edge, on behalf of the Kalorian people, on behalf of every species that believes in justice and decency, I reject your demand for human lives. Murmurs rippled through the bridge. The captain started to protest, but Valera silenced him with a look. The humans will not be surrendered, she continued. Not now. Not ever. They are under Kalorian protection, and any attack on them will be considered an attack on Kalor itself. The commander laughed, a harsh and ugly sound. You would start a war for these emotional vermin? For creatures who cannot even control their own feelings? Yes. Valera's voice did not waver. I would, because those emotions you despise are not weakness. They are humanity's greatest gift. They are passion, and love, and courage, and hope. They are everything my people have forgotten in our pursuit of cold logic. And I will not stand by while you try to extinguish that light from the galaxy. The bridge fell absolutely silent. You are making a mistake, Kalorian, the commander growled. We will destroy you all. Valera smiled then, a fierce and beautiful expression that transformed her face. Try, she said, and you will learn what happens when a Kalorian fights with a human heart. She closed the channel. For a moment, no one moved. Then, the captain stepped forward, his expression shifting from shock to something like admiration. "Officer Valera, you have just committed us to a battle we cannot win. Then we will lose together," she replied calmly. "But we will not lose our souls." Tae-woo pushed through the crowd until he reached her. "Valera," she turned to him, and her eyes were soft despite the steel in her voice. "I meant every word. Your letters taught me that some things matter more than survival. You matter more than survival." Before he could respond, the sensor officer shouted, "Captain! New contacts emerging from hyperspace. Friendly signatures. Reverend. Reverend. Friendly. Friendly signatures." On the screen, space itself seemed to tear open as ship after ship burst through. Kalorian cruisers. Earth Alliance destroyers. Thexan carriers. A fleet had arrived, summoned by the Horizon's distress call, arriving at the moment of greatest need. The Vraxon commander's face twisted with rage as he saw the new arrivals. His warship was powerful, but not powerful enough to fight an entire coalition fleet. "This is not over, Kalorian," he snarled. "Your emotional corruption will spread, and when it does, the Vraxons will be there to burn it out." His ship turned and fled into the darkness of space. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Crew members embraced each other, laughing and crying with relief. Tae-woo felt hands slapping his back, heard voices congratulating him for something he did not quite understand. But he only had eyes for Valera. She stood in the center of the chaos, silver skin glowing, violet eyes shining, looking like a goddess of war and love combined. "You saved us," he said. "We saved each other." She took his hand and held it tight. "Your words gave me the courage to speak. Your heart showed me what was worth fighting for." Around them, the crew celebrated their survival. But in that moment, Tae-woo knew that something even more important had happened. Humanity had found an ally. A true ally. Someone who would stand beside them, not because of treaties or politics, but because she had learned to love them. And it had all started with secret letters that were never meant to be found. The days after the Vraxon encounter were busy ones. The Horizon's Edge limped to the nearest Allied station for repairs. Crew members were treated for injuries. Reports were filed, investigations were launched, and diplomats began the complicated work of responding to the Vraxon threat. Valera was at the center of it all. Her speech on the bridge had been recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. Within hours, she had become a symbol of interspecies unity. A Kalorian who had risked everything to defend humanity. Leaders from a dozen worlds reached out to speak with her. News networks requested interviews. Her own government summoned her for debriefings that lasted days. Tae-woo barely saw her. He understood, of course. She was important now, more important than ever. She had responsibilities that went far beyond a simple human engineer and his notebook full of letters. He returned to his work, fixing damaged systems and helping rebuild what the Vraxons had broken. He tried not to feel the ache in his chest every time he passed the observation deck and found it empty. Gina noticed his mood. "She will come back," she said one evening, as they worked late in the engineering bay. "She risked a war for you, Tae-woo. That is not something someone does, and then just walks away." "I know. I just miss her." "Then write her a letter. Is that not what you do?" He smiled sadly. "I have been writing. Every day. Just like before. But I do not know if she has time to read them anymore." 3 more days passed. The ship was nearly repaired, and the crew was preparing to resume their mission. Tae-woo had almost convinced himself that everything had changed, that Valera's new responsibilities had taken her beyond his reach. Then he returned to his quarters one evening and found an envelope on his desk. It was made of real paper, the kind that was rare and expensive in space. His name was written on the front, in elegant, careful script. His hands trembled as he picked it up. He opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was not human. The letters were too precise, too perfectly formed, as if each one had been calculated and measured before being committed to the page. But there was something else there too, something that went beyond technical perfection. Care, effort, love. He began to read. Dear Kang Tae-woo, I have been trying to write this letter for 7 days. I have started it 43 times and deleted it 42 times. This is my 43rd attempt. And I have decided that I will send it no matter how imperfect it is. You taught me that imperfection is part of being human, and I have decided to embrace that lesson. First, I must apologize for my absence. The events on the bridge created consequences that I did not anticipate. Suddenly everyone wanted to speak with me, to analyze my decision, to understand why a Kalorian would risk so much for humans. I answered their questions as best I could, but the truth is, I do not think they understood. How could they? They have not read your letters. They have not felt their hearts race at the sight of messy handwriting on paper. They have not stood beside you on the observation deck and watched the stars and known, with absolute certainty, that the universe was more beautiful because you were in it. You asked me once why Kalorians abandoned emotion. I did not have a good answer then. I have thought about it much since, and I believe I understand now. We were afraid. We looked at the chaos of feeling, the pain of loss and the terror of love, and we decided that the cost was too high. So we built walls around our hearts and called it evolution. We told ourselves we were better for it. We were wrong. I know this because of you. Because your letters showed me what I was missing. Because your words cracked the walls I had built and let light pour through. Because loving you has taught me that the pain is worth it. That feeling everything, the joy and the fear and the hope and the sorrow, is what makes us alive. I am not good at this. Writing emotions on paper feels strange and difficult, like trying to speak a language I only half understand. But I want to learn. I want to keep learning for the rest of my life, if you will let me. You wrote in one of your letters that you were afraid I would realize you were ordinary and lose interest. I want to address this directly, because it is important that you understand how wrong you are. You are not ordinary, Tae-woo. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever known. Not because you are special by some objective measure, but because you are you. Because you write letters by hand in a world that has forgotten how. Because you pour your heart onto paper even when you are terrified. Because you see beauty in things that others overlook. Because you looked at me, a cold Kalorian officer, and saw something worth loving. That is not ordinary. That is remarkable. That is precious beyond measure. I do not know what the future holds. The Vraxans will return eventually. The galaxy is changing, and my role in it is changing too. There will be challenges ahead that I cannot predict. But I know one thing, with absolute certainty. I want you beside me through all of it. I want your letters waiting for me at the end of long days. I want your smile greeting me on the observation deck. I want your hand in mine as we watch the stars drift past. I want to spend the rest of my existence learning what it means to love someone the way humans do. Fully and completely and without holding back. Your figure, by the way, is also acceptable. More than acceptable. I find myself thinking about it at inappropriate times during official meetings. This is very distracting and entirely your fault. I hope this letter is adequate. I know it is not as beautiful as yours. Kalorians are not natural poets. But I have tried my best, and I hope that is enough. I will be finished with my obligations tomorrow evening. I will come to the observation deck at the usual time. Please be there. I love you, Tae-woo. I love you in a way that defies logic and transcends reason. I love you with the human heart you helped me discover. Yours, now and always. Velira. Tae-woo read the letter 3 times. By the end, tears were streaming down his face. He did not sleep that night. He could not. He sat at his desk and wrote a reply, pouring out everything he felt, all the love and gratitude and overwhelming joy that filled his chest until he thought it might burst. The next evening, he went to the observation deck. He arrived early and stood by the window, watching the stars and waiting. He heard her footsteps before he saw her. Light and graceful, the sound of silver skin moving through the quiet air. He turned, and there she was. Valera stood in the doorway, her violet eyes shining, her silver skin glowing softly in the starlight. She looked tired. There were shadows under her eyes and tension in her shoulders. But when she saw him, all of that melted away, replaced by a smile so warm and bright that it took his breath away. "You came," she said. "Of course I came. I would never miss this." She walked toward him slowly, as if savoring every step. When she reached him, she stopped just close enough to touch. "Did you read my letter?" "I read it 100 times. Was it adequate?" He laughed, a sound that came from somewhere deep in his soul. Her cheeks flushed pale blue. "I worked very hard on it. Kalorians do not admit such things. But I was terrified. I wanted so badly for you to like it. I did not just like it." He reached out and took her hands in his. "I loved it. I love you. I love you too." She said it simply, like a fact, like the most obvious truth in the universe. Tae-woo pulled her close, and she came willingly, resting her head against his shoulder. They stood together in the starlight, two people from different worlds, holding each other like the universe might end if they let go. "You know," Valera said softly, "this all started because I found your secret letters. If I had not been curious, if I had not read them, none of this would have happened. Are you glad you did?" She lifted her head and looked at him, her violet eyes full of light. "I am glad every day," she said. "Reading those letters was the best decision I ever made. They led me to you. They showed me how to feel. They changed my entire existence." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "So yes, I like your figure, human, and your heart, and your soul, and everything else about you." Tae-woo smiled, remembering the first time she had said those words to him. How terrified he had been. How certain he was that his life was over. And now here he was, holding the woman he loved, looking out at a universe full of infinite possibility. "I will keep writing to you," he promised, "every day for the rest of my life." "And I will keep writing back," she replied, "even if my poetry never improves." They both laughed, and then they kissed, a gentle and perfect thing that needed no words at all. Outside the window, the stars burned bright and eternal, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a love story, unlike any other, had found its beginning. Not its ending, its beginning. Because the best love stories never really end. They simply grow, letter by letter, day by day, until they become something that even the cold logic of the universe cannot deny. Something beautiful, something true, something worth fighting for, something human.